Beloved, this is not just another day on the calendar. This is Thursday, 12th of March, 2026 there, and heaven has marked this moment with intention. You did not stumble into this prayer by accident. You were summoned. There is a divine interruption scheduled for your bloodline, and today we stand at the intersection of history and destiny. What could not be broken for generations is about to encounter the power of a strategic, targeted, atomic prayer. Some of you have been fighting battles that did not start with you. Patterns you did not create, cycles you did not authorize, struggles that seem to repeat themselves like a script written long before you were born. But I came with a prophetic announcement: the cycle stops here. The dysfunction stops here. The limitation stops here. The poverty mindset, the fear, the delay, the sabotage, it loses its legal right today. This is not emotional hype. This is spiritual legislation. When we enter into atomic prayer, we are not whispering wishes into the wind. We are issuing decrees into the spirit realm. We are revoking generational permissions. We are dismantling ancestral agreements that have tried to dictate our future. Because you are not a prisoner of your lineage. You are a pioneer of a new legacy. Somebody watching me right now is the chosen one in your family. The one who feels different. The one who sees differently. The one who carries vision when everyone else carries history. And that difference is not accidental, it is an assignment. You were born to interrupt cycles. You were born to shift outcomes. You were born to build what no one before you had the blueprint for. Today's atomic prayer is a spiritual detonation. We are targeting repetitive patterns of defeat. We are confronting inherited limitations. We are breaking subconscious agreements with struggle. And we are establishing a new order over your life. An order of blessing, clarity, favor, and generational impact. This is the moment where you draw a line in the sand and declare, it may have run in my family, but it runs out with me. We are not managing cycles, we are dismantling them. We are not negotiating with dysfunction, we are evicting it. Because when God decides to begin a new legacy, he starts with one surrendered, bold, praying individual who understands their authority. So position yourself. Shift your atmosphere. Engage your faith, because as we enter this atomic prayer, we are not just praying for temporary relief. We are legislating a new future. And when this prayer concludes, what once defined your family history will no longer define your destiny. There are moments in history when heaven refuses to remain silent, when God steps into the timeline of a family and declares that enough is enough. A divine interruption is not subtle. It is strategic. It is intentional. It is the sovereign hand of God reaching into patterns that have cycled for decades, sometimes centuries, and saying, this will go no further. What has been normalized as tradition? What has been excused as personality? What has been tolerated as culture suddenly comes under divine scrutiny? And when God interrupts a bloodline, he does not negotiate with dysfunction. He dismantles it. Many of the struggles people face did not begin with them. They inherited more than eye color and last names. They inherited belief systems, emotional responses, financial habits, relational patterns, fears, and silent expectations. Cycles often hide beneath the surface of familiarity. That's just how we are, becomes the language that protects bondage. But a divine interruption exposes what has been concealed. It reveals that repetition is not destiny. It shows that recurring pain is not purpose. It confronts the lie that history must dictate the future. When God interrupts, he identifies a person within the lineage who is willing to stand in the gap. Someone who senses that there must be more. Someone who feels the weight of patterns, but also carries the fire of possibility. The interruption often begins as holy dissatisfaction. You start questioning outcomes that others have accepted. You begin rejecting ceilings that others have adjusted to. That stirring is not rebellion. It is revelation. It is the Spirit of God awakening you to the fact that you were not born to maintain cycles. You were born to break them. Divine interruption shifts the narrative from inevitability to intentionality. Instead of asking, why does this always happen to us? You begin declaring, this stops with me. It is a transfer of authority. For generations, negative patterns operated unchecked because no one recognized their power to confront them. But once revelation comes, responsibility follows. You cannot unknow what God has shown you. You cannot unsee the pattern once it has been revealed. And with that awareness comes the mandate to act. This interruption does not merely address external circumstances, it penetrates internal agreements. Many cycles continue because they are unconsciously reinforced. Words spoken over children become self-fulfilling prophecies. Expectations of failure create behaviors that produce it. Fear disguised as caution limits expansion. A divine interruption challenges those internal scripts. It replaces inherited narratives with divine truth. It uproots the belief that struggle is your portion. It confronts the expectation of loss. It redefines what is possible in your bloodline. There is also a spiritual dimension to generational cycles. Patterns are not only psychological or sociological, they can be spiritual strongholds. When behaviors are repeated long enough, they create spiritual momentum. That momentum feels heavy, almost automatic. You may find yourself responding in ways you promised you never would. You may see the same relational breakdowns, the same financial setbacks, the same emotional wounds resurfacing. A divine interruption confronts that momentum with greater authority. It introduces the power of intentional prayer, targeted declaration, and conscious obedience. When God interrupts, he does not shame you for what preceded you. He empowers you to transform it. The goal is not to dishonor your lineage, but to heal it. You can honor your family while refusing to perpetuate its pain. You can respect your heritage while rejecting its limitations. A divine interruption reframes your identity. You are no longer just a descendant, you are a reformer. You are not simply carrying a name, you are redefining what that name represents. This interruption may feel disruptive because it requires change. It may demand new habits, new boundaries, new conversations. It might require you to be the first to seek counsel, the first to manage finances differently, the first to pursue education beyond what was expected, the first to forgive deeply, the first to confront addiction, the first to pursue emotional health. Being the interruption means you cannot move on autopilot. You must move with awareness and intention. Divine interruption also releases grace. God does not call you to break cycles without equipping you. There is empowerment available that previous generations did not access. There is revelation that clarifies what once seemed confusing. There is wisdom to navigate situations that once overwhelmed your family. The interruption comes with divine assistance. It is not solely your strength confronting centuries of repetition. It is heaven partnering with your decision. You may notice resistance when you begin to shift patterns. Resistance does not mean you are wrong. It often confirms that you are challenging something entrenched. Cycles protect themselves through familiarity. People may misunderstand your boundaries. They may question your choices. They may feel uncomfortable when you refuse to participate in behaviors that once united you. But transformation always disrupts comfort before it produces freedom. The interruption may isolate you temporarily, but it positions you permanently for impact. A divine interruption also changes what your children will inherit. Instead of passing down unresolved trauma, you begin passing down stability. Instead of transmitting fear, you model faith. Instead of demonstrating limitation, you demonstrate possibility. The interruption may begin with you, but it does not end with you. It creates a ripple effect that reshapes the emotional, spiritual, and practical landscape of generations to come. The beauty of divine interruption is that it is not limited by how long the cycle has existed. It does not matter whether the pattern is 10 years old or 200 years old. Time does not intimidate God. Depth does not deter him. Complexity does not confuse him. What has been deeply rooted can be uprooted. What has been normalized can be neutralized. What has been tolerated can be terminated. As you step into this moment, recognize that you are not simply addressing surface behaviors. You are participating in a strategic realignment of your bloodline. You are challenging assumptions. You are confronting inherited fears. You are rejecting the narrative that this is just the way it is. And in doing so, you become evidence that cycles are not unbreakable. You become proof that destiny can override history. You become the living demonstration that when God interrupts, repetition loses its power and a new pattern begins to emerge, shifting the trajectory of everything connected to your name and rewriting what future generations will call normal. There are realities operating in many lives that were never consciously chosen. Invisible contracts, silent permissions, subconscious agreements that were formed through trauma, fear, repetition, and words spoken long before you had discernment to reject them. Revoking ancestral agreements is about confronting those unseen permissions and declaring that they no longer have authority over your present or your future. It is about recognizing that not everything influencing you originated with you, and therefore not everything shaping you has the right to remain. Ancestral agreements are often subtle. They can look like inherited expectations. People like us never succeed. Marriages in this family never last. We always struggle financially. Anger is just in our blood. When these statements are repeated enough, They become internal vows. Without realizing it, you align your behavior with the script. You make decisions that reinforce the prophecy. You limit yourself to stay loyal to an unspoken narrative. Revoking these agreements begins with awareness. You cannot cancel what you have not identified. Some agreements are forged in pain. A generation experiences betrayal, so the next generation learns not to trust. A family endures poverty, so fear of risk becomes a survival mechanism. A history of abandonment creates emotional walls that feel protective but become prisons. These responses may have been understandable in their original context, but when they are carried forward without examination, they transform into constraints. What once protected now restricts. What once shielded now suffocates. Revocation is a spiritual and psychological act. Spiritually, it is the decision to withdraw consent from patterns that have operated unchecked. Psychologically, it is the reprogramming of beliefs that were accepted without evaluation. You begin to question internal narratives. You ask yourself why you react the way you do. You notice recurring outcomes. You trace patterns back to their origin. And when you discover that a belief was inherited rather than chosen, you recognize your authority to release it. There is power in language. Many ancestral agreements are maintained through words. Words spoken over children become frameworks through which they interpret the world. Labels shape identity. If you were repeatedly told that you are difficult, incapable, or destined to fail, those words may have formed agreements within you. Even if you consciously reject them, they can linger in your subconscious. Revoking ancestral agreements requires replacing inherited language with intentional declarations. You must speak over yourself what aligns with truth rather than tradition. Some agreements are reinforced through behavior. If avoidance was modeled, you may default to withdrawal. If conflict was handled with aggression, you may respond with intensity, even when calm would be more effective. If secrecy was normalized, vulnerability may feel unsafe. These patterns operate almost automatically, creating the illusion that they are personality traits rather than learned responses. Revocation involves interrupting automatic behavior. It means pausing before reacting. It means choosing differently even when the old response feels familiar. There is also a spiritual dimension to inherited agreements. When behaviors are practiced consistently across generations, they can create spiritual strongholds. These strongholds influence thought patterns, emotional responses, and even opportunities. Revoking ancestral agreements in prayer is an act of spiritual authority. It is declaring that whatever was permitted in previous generations does not have the right to continue through you. It is acknowledging that patterns may have existed, but they are not permanent fixtures. Revocation does not dishonor your ancestors, it redeems their story. You can respect the resilience of those who came before you while refusing to perpetuate their unresolved wounds. Many ancestors did the best they could with the knowledge and resources they had, but you have access to new understanding, new tools, new revelation. You are not rejecting them. You are building upon them. You are taking the baton and running in a new direction. Breaking agreement often requires confronting fear. If a family has consistently avoided risk, stepping into new territory may feel threatening. If emotional suppression was the norm, expressing vulnerability may feel dangerous. If mediocrity was accepted as safety, excellence may feel intimidating. Revocation means moving forward despite discomfort. It means trusting that the discomfort of change is preferable to the pain of repetition. It is important to understand that agreements can be subconscious. You may genuinely desire a different outcome while unknowingly reinforcing the old pattern. For example, you may pray for financial increase, but internally believe that wealth is unattainable for people like you. You may long for healthy relationships, but subconsciously expect abandonment. These internal contradictions create friction. Revoking ancestral agreements requires aligning your beliefs with your desires. It involves examining the stories you tell yourself and ensuring they support the future you seek. Strategic prayer plays a significant role in this process. When you pray with intention, you are not merely expressing hope. You are issuing declarations. You are renouncing fear. You are rejecting limitation. You are canceling internal vows formed in moments of pain. You are declaring that inherited dysfunction does not define you. Prayer becomes a tool of reauthorization. Instead of allowing history to dictate your path, you invite divine guidance to redefine it. As you revoke ancestral agreements, you may encounter resistance, not only externally but internally. Old thoughts may resurface. Familiar temptations may intensify. Doubt may attempt to reassert itself. This does not mean the revocation failed. It means the old pattern is losing ground. Consistency is essential. Each time you choose differently, you weaken the agreement. Each time you declare truth over inherited lies, you reinforce a new foundation. Revocation also involves forgiveness. Sometimes agreements are tied to unresolved bitterness. If pain was never processed, it can echo through generations. Choosing to forgive does not excuse harm, it releases you from perpetuating it. It breaks emotional chains that would otherwise bind future generations. It ensures that the story does not continue to be written in the same ink of resentment and regret. When ancestral agreements are revoked, space is created, space for new beliefs, space for healthier habits, space for opportunities that were previously inaccessible because your mindset could not sustain them. Revocation clears internal clutter. It dismantles mental barriers. It removes spiritual permissions that allowed cycles to continue unchecked. You begin to notice shifts, your responses change, your expectations evolve. You see possibilities where you once saw limitations. You handle conflict with maturity rather than reflex. You pursue goals with confidence rather than hesitation. These changes may seem gradual, but they signify a profound transformation. The old script no longer controls your narrative. The inherited agreement has been replaced with intentional alignment. Revoking ancestral agreements is not a single moment, but a continuous posture. It is remaining vigilant about what you allow to influence you. It is being mindful of language, behavior, and belief. It is consistently choosing growth over familiarity. And as you maintain that posture, you establish a new agreement not with fear or limitation, but with purpose, clarity, and authority that reshapes the trajectory of your life and alters what future generations will inherit through your decision to stand in awareness and refuse to carry forward what no longer serves your destiny. For too long, many people have defined themselves by the environments that shaped them. Family history becomes identity. Past experiences become labels. Failures become names you answer to. But an identity shift begins the moment you recognize that who you were shaped to be is not necessarily who you were created to be. There is a profound difference between being a product of your family's history and becoming the architect of a new prophetic legacy. One is passive inheritance. The other is intentional construction. When you see yourself only as a product of history, you subconsciously limit your expectations. You measure your possibilities by what has already been demonstrated. If no one in your family built wealth, you assume struggle is normal. If no one modeled healthy love, you normalize dysfunction. If mediocrity was tolerated, excellence feels foreign. History becomes a ceiling instead of a foundation. But an identity shift challenges that ceiling. It asks a bold question: what if your origin does not have to dictate your outcome? Being an architect requires vision. Architects do not simply accept the land as it is. They imagine what can stand upon it. They see beyond the current landscape. They design with intention. When you embrace an identity shift, you begin to see your life that way. Your family history may be the land you inherited, but it does not determine the structure you will build. You are not required to replicate the architecture of the past. You are empowered to design something new. This shift begins internally. It is not about changing your last name or denying your roots. It is about redefining your relationship with them. Instead of saying, "This is who we are," you begin saying, "This is where we started." That subtle change in language transforms limitation into launching ground. You honor the resilience of your ancestors without adopting their restrictions. You acknowledge the battles they fought without agreeing to fight the same ones indefinitely. Identity is powerful because it influences behavior. If you see yourself as destined to repeat patterns, you will unconsciously align your actions with that belief. If you see yourself as the architect of a new legacy, you will approach decisions differently. Architects plan. They consider long-term impact. They evaluate materials. They anticipate outcomes. When you shift your identity, you stop making choices solely for immediate comfort and start making decisions with generational consequences in mind. This identity shift also requires you to confront internalized narratives. Perhaps you were told that you are just like a certain relative in all the negative ways. Perhaps comparisons were used to predict your failure. Over time, those narratives may have embedded themselves in your subconscious. You might find yourself thinking, "I guess this is just who I am." But identity is not fixed by opinion. It is shaped by belief and reinforced by action. When you challenge those inherited narratives, you loosen their grip on your self-concept. Being the architect of a prophetic legacy means you live with awareness of purpose. Prophetic does not simply mean spiritual language. It means future-oriented. It means you are not just reacting to circumstances. You are responding with intention because you understand that your life carries weight beyond the present moment. Every habit you form, every boundary you establish, every risk you take or refuse to take contributes to the blueprint of what comes after you. An identity shift can feel uncomfortable because it separates you from familiar definitions. When you stop agreeing with limiting labels, others may struggle to adjust. They may attempt to remind you of who you used to be. They may resist your growth because it challenges their expectations. But growth always disrupts static environments. When you decide to become an architect rather than a product, you accept that not everyone will immediately understand your evolution. This shift also changes how you interpret adversity. If you are merely a product of history, setbacks reinforce the belief that nothing ever changes. But if you are an architect, setbacks become design challenges rather than verdicts. Architects revise plans. They adapt to unexpected conditions. They strengthen weak foundations. In the same way, you begin to see obstacles as opportunities to refine your strategy instead of confirmations of inherited limitation. There is courage required in this transformation. It takes courage to believe that your life can look different from what you have seen. It takes courage to pursue education when no one before you did. It takes courage to seek healing when silence was the norm. It takes courage to build healthy relationships when dysfunction was familiar. Courage becomes the tool that allows you to lay bricks where there was once only bare ground. An identity shift also involves responsibility. When you accept that you are the architect, you can no longer blame history for every outcome. While history may explain certain tendencies, it does not excuse stagnation. You become accountable for your growth. You recognize that while you did not choose your starting point, you have influence over your direction. Responsibility is not punishment. It is empowerment. It places the blueprint back in your hands. You may begin to notice subtle changes as this shift takes root. Your language evolves. Instead of speaking defeat, you speak possibility. Instead of expecting failure, you anticipate progress. Instead of aligning with fear, you align with faith. These changes may seem small, but they represent foundational adjustments. Just as a building's stability depends on its foundation, your future depends on the beliefs beneath your actions. Being the architect of a new legacy also means you are mindful of what you model. You understand that others are watching, especially the next generation. They are observing how you handle conflict, how you manage finances, how you pursue dreams, how you treat yourself and others. Your life becomes a living blueprint. You may not realize the full impact of your choices now, but seeds are being planted through your consistency. This identity shift does not erase your past, it redeems it. The struggles you witnessed become motivation to build differently. The pain you experience becomes wisdom you apply intentionally. The absence of certain resources becomes the reason you prioritize providing them for others. Your history transforms from a chain into a catalyst. Instead of carrying it as weight, you use it as material for construction. Over time, the evidence of this shift becomes visible. Patterns that once felt inevitable begin to dissolve. Opportunities that once seemed unreachable become attainable. Confidence replaces hesitation. Vision replaces limitation. And as you continue to build with intention, you realize that you were never meant to simply mirror the past. You were designed to reshape it, to construct something that reflects purpose rather than pattern, something that speaks of transformation rather than repetition, something that stands as proof that identity is not confined to origin, but expanded by decision and sustained by the daily choice to build a future that transcends everything that came before it. Prayer is often misunderstood as a passive act, a quiet ritual reserved for moments of desperation or devotion. But spiritual legislation reframes prayer as something far more powerful and intentional. It is not merely communication, it is authorization. It is not just expression, it is enforcement. When you engage in atomic prayer, you are not hoping circumstances will shift. You are issuing decrees that establish order where there has been chaos, clarity where there has been confusion, and alignment where there has been disorder. Legislation implies law. It suggests structure, authority, and jurisdiction. In the natural world, laws govern behavior and determine outcomes. In the spiritual realm, principles operate with similar precision. What is spoken with conviction, aligned with truth, and reinforced with belief carries weight. Words are not empty. They create frameworks. They set boundaries. They define what is permitted and what is prohibited. When you understand prayer as legislation, you begin to approach it with intentionality rather than emotion alone. Many people pray reactively. They respond to crises, asking for relief from pressure or escape from pain. While there is nothing wrong with seeking help, spiritual legislation goes beyond reaction. It is proactive. It anticipates opposition and addresses it before it manifests. It does not wait for dysfunction to escalate. It confronts it at its root. This type of prayer requires awareness. You must discern patterns, recognize influences, and identify areas where order has been compromised. Atomic prayer is precise. Just as an atom contains concentrated energy, this form of prayer targets specific issues with focused authority. It does not speak vaguely about blessing. It names areas that require intervention. It does not dance around limitation. It confronts it directly. Precision matters because clarity strengthens conviction. When you articulate exactly what you are addressing, your declarations carry sharper impact. Spiritual legislation also requires confidence in authority. If you doubt your right to speak, your words lose force. Authority is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is the recognition that you are permitted to establish boundaries in your life. You are allowed to reject fear. You are authorized to refuse cycles. You are empowered to declare peace over chaos and clarity over confusion. This confidence transforms prayer from a plea into a proclamation. There is a difference between wishing and decreeing. Wishing is uncertain, decreeing is decisive. Wishing hopes for change, decreeing commands alignment. When you legislate spiritually, you are not negotiating with dysfunction. You are not asking negativity for permission to leave. You are declaring that it has no legal ground to remain. This mindset shifts your posture. Instead of feeling powerless against recurring patterns, you step into your role as a gatekeeper of your environment. Order is a central theme in spiritual legislation. Where there is disorder, productivity diminishes. Where there is confusion, progress stalls. When you pray legislatively, you are restoring structure. You are aligning your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions with intentional design. You are declaring that your mind will not be a battlefield of chaos. You are establishing that your home will not be governed by conflict. You are determining that your decisions will not be driven by fear. Consistency strengthens legislation. In the natural realm, laws are reinforced through repeated application. Similarly, spiritual decrees gain momentum when spoken consistently. One declaration may initiate a shift, but sustained alignment solidifies it. This is why discipline matters. You cannot legislate order while living in contradiction. Your actions must support your declarations. Integrity amplifies authority. Understanding prayer as legislation also changes how you respond to resistance. When you encounter opposition, you do not interpret it as defeat. You see it as evidence that change is underway. Resistance often surfaces when old systems are being dismantled. Instead of retreating, you reinforce your decree. You remind yourself of the authority you carry. You continue to align your behavior with the order you have established. Spiritual legislation is not about controlling others. It is about governing your domain. You cannot legislate someone else's will, but you can determine the atmosphere you cultivate. You can choose the beliefs you entertain. You can define the standards you uphold. You can set boundaries that protect your peace and purpose. This governance begins internally and radiates outward. There is also a creative dimension to this form of prayer. When you declare alignment, you are not only removing disorder, you are constructing stability. You are not only rejecting fear, you are cultivating courage. You are not only dismantling limitation, you are building capacity. Legislation establishes what will be normal moving forward. It sets expectations. It defines culture within your personal sphere. Atomic prayer requires focus. Distraction weakens legislation. If your mind is scattered, your declarations lose coherence. Centering yourself before you speak is essential. You gather your thoughts. You identify your intention. You align your emotions with your words. This integration creates strength. When your belief, language, and action operate in harmony, your influence increases. You may notice subtle changes as you consistently practice spiritual legislation. Your confidence grows. Your reactions become measured. Your environment begins to reflect the order you declared. Patterns that once seemed immovable start to shift. Opportunities align with your new expectations. Clarity replaces confusion. These changes are not accidental. They are the result of intentional governance. Legislation also involves maintenance. Just as laws require enforcement, your declarations require vigilance. You monitor your thoughts. You correct language that contradicts your decrees. You adjust behaviors that undermine your intention. This ongoing awareness ensures that the order you establish does not erode over time. When you embrace atomic prayer as spiritual legislation, you move from passive hope to active alignment. You recognize that your voice carries influence. You understand that clarity shapes outcomes. You step into your role as a steward of your environment, and with each deliberate declaration, you reinforce a structure that supports peace, progress, and purpose, establishing a standard that governs your life with intention and authority, ensuring that what you have decreed continues to shape your reality in alignment with the order you have chosen to enforce. There is a distinct anointing that rests on those who refuse to normalize what once felt inevitable. A cycle breaker does not always look different on the outside at first, but internally there is a disruption taking place. You begin to feel uncomfortable with patterns that others have accepted. You question behaviors that were excused for years. You sense that tolerance has overstayed its welcome. That discomfort is not rebellion against your roots. It is revelation that you were not born to preserve dysfunction, but to confront it. To carry a cycle breaker anointing means you see repetition clearly. You notice how the same arguments surface in different relationships. You observe how financial instability repeats despite hard work. You recognize emotional responses that mirror previous generations. Where others see coincidence, you see pattern. Awareness is the first evidence of this anointing. You cannot break what you do not recognize, and recognition often sets you apart. Confronting what others tolerated requires courage. It is easier to blend in with inherited norms than to challenge them. When you decide that anger will no longer define your communication style, you may stand alone. When you refuse to engage in gossip that once bonded the family, you may feel isolated. When you establish boundaries where access was previously unlimited, resistance may arise. But the anointing to break cycles strengthens you to withstand discomfort for the sake of transformation. This calling often begins with a deep internal conviction that there must be more. You may not initially have the language for it, but you sense that your life is meant to chart a different course. That sense of difference can feel lonely. You may feel misunderstood because your vision extends beyond the familiar. But being set apart is not punishment, it is preparation. A cycle breaker must see beyond the present to build for the future. Building what others could not see requires imagination and faith. If no one in your lineage modeled healthy communication, you must learn and practice it intentionally. If entrepreneurship was never pursued, you must research, risk, and refine on your own. If emotional healing was dismissed, you must seek understanding and apply it. You become both student and pioneer. You gather tools that were not previously available and use them to construct a new standard. The cycle breaker anointing does not erase history. It redeems it. You may understand why certain behaviors developed. Perhaps survival demanded hard edges. Perhaps scarcity shaped fear-based decisions. Recognizing the origin of a pattern can create compassion without perpetuating the pattern itself. You honor the resilience of those who came before you while acknowledging that survival strategies are not always suitable for thriving. This anointing also sharpens discernment. You become sensitive to subtle compromises. You notice when old habits attempt to resurface. You recognize when language begins to drift back toward limitation. Instead of ignoring these signs, you address them quickly. Discipline becomes your ally. Consistency becomes your safeguard. Small corrections prevent major regressions. Breaking cycles is rarely dramatic in a single moment. It is often the accumulation of daily decisions, choosing patience over rage, choosing budgeting over impulsive spending, choosing therapy over denial, choosing forgiveness over resentment. Each choice may seem small, but together they create a new trajectory. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes your normal. The anointing to break cycles also carries responsibility. Once you see clearly, you cannot return to ignorance. Awareness requires action. You may feel the weight of knowing that if you do not shift the pattern, it will continue. That weight can feel heavy, but it is also empowering. You are not powerless against history. You are positioned to alter it. Resistance may come from unexpected places. Sometimes those closest to you may not understand your transformation. They may interpret your boundaries as rejection. They may perceive your growth as judgment. It is important to remain grounded in humility while standing firm in conviction. You are not breaking cycles to prove superiority. You are breaking them to create stability. Building what others could not see often means you move without immediate validation. Vision precedes evidence. You may pursue education before seeing financial reward. You may establish healthier communication before experiencing relational harmony. You may invest in personal growth before others recognize the change. Patience is essential. Seeds planted consistently will eventually produce fruit. A cycle breaker also learns to manage internal dialogue. The mind can replay inherited doubts. Thoughts like, "this is just who we are," may attempt to resurface. When they do, you counter them with intentional truth. You remind yourself that identity is shaped by decision, not dictated by repetition. You reinforce your commitment to growth through deliberate language and action. As you continue to confront tolerated dysfunction, you will notice subtle shifts. The atmosphere around you changes. Conversations become more constructive. Financial habits become more strategic. Emotional responses become more measured. These shifts may not be immediate or perfect, but they signify progress. You are no longer reacting automatically. You are responding intentionally. The cycle breaker anointing also impacts those watching you. Younger generations observe your choices. They see that change is possible. They learn that boundaries are healthy. They witness the courage it takes to pursue healing. Even if they do not articulate it, your consistency plants seeds in their understanding of what is normal and what is negotiable. Over time, the narrative attached to your family name begins to evolve. Instead of being associated with instability, it becomes linked to resilience and growth. Instead of repeating patterns of defeat, it reflects progress and discipline. This transformation is not accidental. It is the result of deliberate confrontation and intentional construction. Carrying this anointing means you remain vigilant. You do not assume that one breakthrough guarantees permanent freedom. You continue refining your habits. You remain open to learning. You stay aware of subtle influences. Growth becomes a lifestyle rather than a milestone. In embracing the call to confront what others tolerated and to build what others could not see, you step into a role that reshapes the trajectory of your lineage. You become the turning point. You become the evidence that cycles are not unbreakable. You demonstrate that awareness combined with courage can redefine what is inherited, establishing a new standard through persistence, discipline, and unwavering commitment to transformation that steadily replaces repetition with renewal and sets in motion a legacy shaped by intentional choice rather than automatic patterns. There are defining moments in life when a line is drawn between what was and what will be. Legacy activation is not merely about personal success. It is about initiating a new generational narrative. It is the conscious decision to shift the trajectory of your bloodline so that what follows you carries evidence of transformation rather than repetition. When legacy is activated, you stop living only for the present moment and begin making choices that echo into the future. A generational narrative is formed through repeated patterns, spoken beliefs, demonstrated habits, and emotional climates. Families develop identities over time, some empowering, others limiting. These identities are reinforced through stories. "We're survivors. We'll never get ahead. We always struggle. We're strong but unlucky." Such phrases may seem harmless, but they construct the framework through which each new generation interprets its possibilities. Activating a new legacy requires rewriting that internal script. The first step in legacy activation is awareness. You must recognize the existing narrative before you can revise it. What patterns have defined your family history? How has money been handled? How has conflict been resolved? How have dreams been pursued or postponed? How has faith been expressed or neglected? These questions reveal the blueprint you inherited. Activation begins when you decide that inheritance is not obligation. Legacy is built through consistency. Grand declarations without daily discipline produce inspiration but not transformation. If you desire a narrative of financial stability, you must practice stewardship. If you desire a narrative of emotional health, you must pursue healing. If you desire a narrative of spiritual strength, you must cultivate intentional devotion. Each repeated action becomes a sentence in the new story you are writing. Blessing, favor, stability, and supernatural advancement are not abstract ideas. They are outcomes shaped by alignment. Blessing flows where discipline and obedience intersect. Favor increases where integrity is maintained. Stability grows where boundaries are respected. Advancement accelerates where vision is sustained. Legacy activation involves aligning your daily choices with the outcomes you want future generations to inherit. One of the most powerful aspects of activating a new legacy is shifting mindset. If previous generations operated from scarcity, you must learn abundance thinking. Scarcity says there is never enough, leading to fear-based decisions. Abundance recognizes possibility and encourages strategic growth. This shift does not ignore reality. It reframes it. Instead of focusing solely on limitations, you begin identifying opportunities. Instead of expecting loss, you anticipate increase. Stability is often the missing ingredient in generational narratives marked by chaos. Stability is not rigidity, it is reliability. It means creating predictable patterns of health and responsibility. It means paying bills on time, keeping commitments, managing emotions with maturity, and cultivating environments where peace is prioritized. These practices may seem simple, but when repeated consistently, they transform the atmosphere future generations will call normal. Legacy activation also requires healing unresolved wounds. Trauma left unattended can echo through decades. Emotional pain that is suppressed often resurfaces in new forms. By confronting and processing your own wounds, you prevent their transmission. Healing becomes an act of generosity toward the future. It ensures that what flows through your lineage is strength refined by wisdom rather than pain disguised as personality. Favor is often misunderstood as random blessing, but it frequently follows preparation. When you develop skills, maintain integrity, and remain faithful in small responsibilities, you position yourself for expanded opportunity. As opportunities arise, your readiness allows you to steward them well. This stewardship reinforces the new narrative. Instead of opportunities being squandered due to unpreparedness, they become building blocks for generational progress. Supernatural advancement does not eliminate effort. It multiplies it. There are moments when acceleration occurs, doors open unexpectedly, connections align strategically, timing shifts in your favor. These moments are maximized when you have cultivated discipline. Legacy activation prepares you to handle acceleration without collapse. It strengthens your foundation so that rapid growth does not create instability. As you activate a new narrative, you may feel the tension between old habits and new intentions. The mind may attempt to revert to familiar patterns. Doubt may whisper that change is temporary. This is where consistency becomes critical. Each time you choose differently, you reinforce the new script. Each disciplined action weakens the influence of the old narrative. Children and younger relatives observe more than you realize. They watch how you respond to stress. They notice whether you speak hope or despair. They see whether you persist or quit. Your daily conduct teaches them what is possible. Legacy activation is not only about what you say, it is about what you model. Your life becomes a curriculum for those who follow. Financial literacy, emotional intelligence, spiritual maturity, and relational health are tools that shape generational narratives. If these tools were absent in your upbringing, learning them now becomes an act of transformation. You equip yourself not only for personal growth, but for generational empowerment. Knowledge acquired and applied becomes inheritance transferred. There may be moments when progress feels slow. Generational change rarely happens overnight. However, small, consistent improvements accumulate. Saving a modest amount regularly builds financial resilience. Practicing calm communication reduces relational tension. Setting healthy boundaries fosters respect. Over time, these incremental shifts create a dramatically different environment. Legacy activation also requires vision. You must imagine what you want your family to be known for: integrity, excellence, compassion, innovation, faith. Clarity about this vision guides decision making. When faced with choices, you evaluate them through the lens of the legacy you are building. Does this action align with the narrative you desire to establish? As the new narrative solidifies, you will begin to notice language changing. Conversations shift from limitation to possibility. Expectations rise, standards improve. Opportunities are pursued with confidence rather than hesitation. The atmosphere transforms gradually, reflecting the consistency of your choices. In activating a new generational narrative marked by blessing, favor, stability, and supernatural advancement, you commit to living intentionally. You refuse to allow history to dictate destiny. You choose to build with foresight rather than drift with familiarity. Through disciplined action, renewed mindset, and unwavering commitment to growth, you establish a foundation that supports progress, ensuring that what flows from your life into future generations carries evidence of deliberate transformation and sustained alignment with the future you determined to create rather than the past you inherited. Beloved, this is not just another Thursday. This is not just another calendar date. This is 12 February 2026, and heaven has already marked this day with your name on it. There are moments in history when the atmosphere shifts, when the invisible realm leans into the visible, when eternity interrupts time. Today is one of those moments. Today, we step into an Edo makes pure leer, a prayer that does not whisper, a prayer that does not beg, a prayer that does not negotiate. This is a prayer that legislates. This is a prayer that activates. This is a prayer that opens heaven's portals and commands miracles on demand. I need you to understand something. Miracles are not random. They are not accidental. They are not reserved for a chosen few. Miracles respond to alignment. Miracles respond to authority. Miracles respond to sound waves of faith that refuse to be silenced. When heaven opens, limitations close. When portals activate, cycles break. When divine access is granted, what was delayed becomes accelerated. What was denied becomes approved. What was impossible becomes inevitable. There are portals of provision, portals of healing, portals of restoration. Beloved, this is not just another Thursday. This is not just another calendar date. This is 12 February 2026, and heaven has already marked this day with your name on it. There are moments in history when the atmosphere shifts, when the invisible realm leans into the visible, when eternity interrupts time. Today is one of those moments. Today, we step into an Ado makes pure leer, a prayer that does not whisper, a prayer that does not beg, a prayer that does not negotiate. This is a prayer that legislates. This is a prayer that activates. This is a prayer that opens heaven's portals and commands miracles on demand. I need you to understand something. Miracles are not random. They are not accidental. They are not reserved for a chosen few. Miracles respond to alignment. Miracles respond to authority. Miracles respond to sound waves of faith that refuse to be silenced. When heaven opens, limitations close. When portals activate, cycles break. When divine access is granted, what was delayed becomes accelerated. What was denied becomes approved. What was impossible becomes inevitable. There are portals of provision, portals of healing, portals of restoration, portals of divine strategy. And today, we are not standing outside knocking. We are stepping in with spiritual clearance. This is your moment to shift the narrative of your life. Some of you have been praying for years. Some of you have been believing against the odds. Some of you have been fighting silent battles behind closed doors. But what if I told you that one authorized prayer can do what years of striving could not accomplish? What if I told you that when heaven recognizes your voice, systems must respond? Today, we are calling down divine intervention. We are summoning supernatural turnaround. We are activating miracle momentum. Not next month, not next year, but now. There is a frequency in prayer that disrupts the enemy's agenda. There is a sound in your mouth that destabilizes opposition. When you pray with revelation, you don't ask from a place of weakness. You decree from a place of dominion. This is not emotional hype. This is spiritual legislation. As we enter this atomic prayer, I want you to posture yourself with expectation. Clear the distractions. Silence the doubt. Evict fear from your atmosphere. Because when we pray today, we are opening gates that have been shut. We are releasing resources that have been locked. We are summoning answers that have been waiting for authorization. Heaven is not closed over your life. It has been waiting for your command. So prepare your heart, prepare your spirit, prepare your faith, because on this Thursday, 12 February 2026, we are stepping into open heaven portals, and miracles will not be delayed, negotiated, or denied. They will be activated right here, right now. Heaven responds to authorized voices, not casual whispers. There is a difference between speaking words and releasing authority. There is a difference between hoping something will happen and commanding what has already been established in the realm of the spirit. Authorization is not volume. It is alignment. It is not emotional intensity. It is divine positioning. When you understand who you are, you stop whispering requests and you start issuing decrees. An authorized voice carries recognition in the spirit realm. Just as earthly systems respond to credentials, badges, and signatures, heaven responds to identity, covenant, and alignment. When you know that you have been given dominion, when you know that you are seated in a place of spiritual authority, you no longer approach prayer as a beggar trying to convince God to move. You approach prayer as a representative of heaven, enforcing what has already been written. Casual whispers are filled with doubt. They are saturated with hesitation. They question whether God is willing. They question whether change is possible. They ask timidly, unsure of the outcome. But an authorized voice speaks from revelation. It speaks from the understanding that heaven has already spoken, that promises have already been established, that victory has already been secured. It does not ask whether it can, it declares that it shall. The atmosphere recognizes authority. Demonic resistance recognizes authority. Delays recognize authority. Obstacles recognize authority. When a voice is authorized, things shift not because of noise, but because of legal standing. Authority is rooted in identity. Identity is rooted in revelation. When revelation illuminates your position, your prayer language changes. You stop pleading for access and start exercising it. Casual whispers come from spiritual amnesia. They come from forgetting who you are and what has been placed within you. They sound like someone who has access but behaves like an outsider. They sound like someone who has keys but keeps knocking. Authorization, however, understands the keys. It understands access. It understands that you are not trying to earn what has already been granted. There is a sound that heaven recognizes. It is the sound of agreement. It is the sound of alignment. It is the sound of a believer who understands that they are partnering with divine intent. Authorized voices do not create new promises. They enforce existing ones. They echo what heaven has declared. They harmonize with the will of God. They move in synchronization with divine timing. When you speak from authorization, you are not trying to manipulate heaven. You are aligning with it. You are stepping into the current of what God is already doing. Casual whispers try to persuade. Authorized voices proclaim. Casual whispers are uncertain. Authorized voices are anchored. Casual whispers are reactive. Authorized voices are proactive. The realm of the spirit is legal. It operates on principles, alignment, and agreement. When you pray from a place of authorization, you are engaging those principles. You are invoking covenant. You are invoking promises. You are invoking divine order. Heaven does not respond to desperation alone. It responds to alignment with its established word. Authorized voices carry weight. They carry conviction. They carry clarity. They do not stutter in uncertainty. They do not retreat in the face of resistance. They understand that opposition does not cancel authority. Resistance does not revoke access. Delays do not dismantle position. Authorization remains steady regardless of external conditions. There are people who have been whispering over situations that require decrees. They have been asking politely when they have been given permission to command. They have been speaking softly when heaven has equipped them to speak boldly. And the shift begins the moment you realize that your voice is not ordinary. It has been empowered. It has been commissioned. It has been authorized. Authorization is not arrogance. It is confidence rooted in covenant. It is the understanding that you are not operating alone. It is the recognition that you are backed by heaven's government. When an ambassador speaks, they do not speak their own agenda. They represent the authority of the kingdom that sent them. In the same way, when you pray from authorization, you are representing the will of heaven. Casual whispers shrink in the presence of intimidation. Authorized voices rise. Casual whispers adjust to fear. Authorized voices confront it. Casual whispers accommodate doubt. Authorized voices dismantle it. The difference is not personality, it is revelation. It is knowing that your voice carries legal power in the spirit. When heaven responds, it is not because you were loud. It is because you were aligned. It is not because you repeated words endlessly. It is because you spoke from a position of authority. The spiritual realm is not moved by empty repetition. It is moved by authorized agreement. When your declaration matches heaven's decree, acceleration begins. Authorized voices understand timing. They discern moments. They recognize when portals are open and when divine strategies are being released. Casual whispers are unaware of timing. They speak randomly. They move without discernment. But authorization is sensitive. It listens before it speaks. It aligns before it declares. Your voice becomes authorized when your life aligns. Obedience strengthens authority. Integrity fortifies it. Faith activates it. The more aligned you are with divine principles, the greater your authority becomes. It is not a mystical mystery. It is a spiritual law. Alignment amplifies authorization. Heaven responds because it recognizes itself in your words. It hears its own promise echoed back. It hears its own will articulated. It hears agreement. And agreement creates movement. Agreement opens portals. Agreement releases miracles. When you stop whispering casually and start speaking intentionally, something shifts within you. Confidence rises, fear diminishes, doubt loses its grip. You become aware that you are not trying to reach heaven from below. You are partnering with it from your position of authority. There's a boldness that comes when you understand that your voice carries divine backing. You do not shrink back in prayer. You do not hesitate. You do not second guess. You speak with clarity. You speak with certainty. You speak knowing that heaven is attentive to authorized voices. The transformation begins internally. Before your circumstances change, your posture changes. Before doors open externally, alignment opens internally. You move from whispering requests to declaring realities. You move from hoping for intervention to enforcing promise. You move from uncertainty to assurance. Authorized voices create shifts because they operate from truth. They do not speak what they see, they speak what has been established. They do not magnify problems, they magnify promise. They do not partner with fear, they partner with faith. Heaven responds to authorized voices, not casual whispers. It responds to those who know their position, understand their identity, and align their speech with divine intent. When you step into that awareness, your prayer life transforms from passive communication into active legislation, from hesitant requests into confident decrees, from uncertain whispers into authoritative declarations that carry the sound of heaven's own agreement reverberating through your voice as you stand aligned with divine order and speak from the place you have already been seated in the Spirit. Portals open when faith aligns with divine authority. Faith by itself is powerful, but faith that understands authority becomes unstoppable. Many people have belief, but not everyone has alignment. They believe God can, but they are not positioned to move with what God is doing. Alignment is the bridge between possibility and manifestation. It is the calibration of your spirit to heaven's frequency. A portal is not fantasy, it is access. It is an opening between realms where what is established in the spirit finds expression in the natural. Throughout history, divine portals were activated when individuals aligned themselves with the will, timing, and authority of heaven. The portal was never forced open by emotion. It was accessed through alignment. Faith that is disconnected from authority can become frustration. You can believe strongly and still feel blocked if you are not aligned with divine order. But when faith understands its legal position, when it recognizes covenant identity and delegated dominion, something shifts. The atmosphere responds differently. Resistance weakens. Delays begin to collapse. Divine authority is not human control. It is delegated power. It is heaven's permission to operate on its behalf. When faith aligns with that authority, you stop striving and start legislating. You stop begging and start enforcing. You stop chasing outcomes and start declaring them. Alignment removes friction. It removes spiritual interference. It brings clarity. There are moments when heaven is ready to release something, but the earth is not positioned to receive it. Faith becomes the positioning mechanism. It brings your thoughts into alignment. It brings your speech into agreement. It brings your actions into harmony with divine instruction. And when alignment is established, portals respond. A portal opens because there is no contradiction between heaven's decree and your declaration. There is no resistance between divine intention and human cooperation. Faith says yes to what authority has already established. It does not invent its own agenda. It synchronizes with heaven's blueprint. When faith aligns with divine authority, fear loses influence. Doubt loses its argument. Confusion loses its voice. Alignment brings order. It rearranges priorities. It corrects motives. It purifies intention. You begin to pray differently. You begin to speak differently. You begin to expect differently. Portals are sensitive to agreement. They open where there is unity between heaven and earth. Faith is the handshake. Authority is the authorization. Together, they create access. Without faith, authority remains unused. Without authority, faith lacks direction. But when both are joined, movement begins. Divine authority flows from identity. You cannot align with authority if you do not understand who you are. When you recognize that you are positioned with purpose, that you have been entrusted with spiritual influence, your faith gains structure. It gains confidence. It gains legal standing. Alignment requires surrender. It requires letting go of personal agendas that contradict divine timing. It requires releasing impatience. It requires trusting that authority operates beyond what you see. Faith does not rush authority, it trusts it. It does not compete with heaven's plan, it cooperates with it. When alignment is present, acceleration follows. Doors that were once closed begin to respond. Opportunities that seemed distant draw near. Solutions that felt hidden become visible. It is not coincidence, it is access. It is the evidence of a portal responding to alignment. Faith aligned with authority does not fluctuate with circumstances. It remains steady when reports are negative. It remains firm when evidence is limited. It understands that authority is not threatened by temporary conditions. It knows that heaven's decree outweighs earthly contradiction. Portals do not open through striving. They open through positioning. Faith positions you correctly. It places you in agreement. It places you in expectation. It places you in readiness. Authority recognizes readiness. It responds to alignment. When you speak from aligned faith, your words carry structure. They carry clarity. They carry conviction. You are no longer guessing what God might do. You are declaring what He has authorized. Your confidence is not arrogance, it is agreement. It is the assurance that comes from understanding divine backing. Alignment sharpens discernment. You begin to sense timing. You recognize when to move and when to wait. You perceive shifts in the atmosphere. You become sensitive to instruction. Faith becomes intelligent. It becomes strategic. It becomes aware of divine rhythm. Portals of healing open when faith aligns with the authority of restoration. Portals of provision open when faith aligns with the authority of covenant. Portals of breakthrough open when faith aligns with the authority of promise. Each portal responds to a specific alignment. Each opening is connected to a specific agreement. There are individuals who believe deeply yet remain misaligned. Their faith is sincere, but it is scattered. It lacks focus. It lacks synchronization. Alignment gathers faith into precision. It directs it toward divine intention. It channels it into effective declaration. Authority does not shout. It does not panic. It does not rush. It stands firm. When your faith aligns with that posture, you stop reacting emotionally and start responding strategically. You operate from stability. You move with calm confidence. Alignment also corrects language. You stop speaking contrary to what you are believing for. You stop reinforcing limitations. You stop agreeing with defeat. Your words begin to echo authority. Your declarations begin to reflect heaven's perspective. When portals open, they create movement between realms. What was stored in the invisible begins to manifest in the visible. What was delayed becomes accessible. What was withheld becomes released. Alignment activates transfer. Faith aligned with authority also creates resilience. When resistance attempts to rise, you do not retreat. You do not abandon your position. You understand that authority has already secured the outcome. You remain steadfast because you know you are aligned. The process of alignment refines character. It deepens trust. It strengthens conviction. It removes distractions. It clarifies purpose. It draws you closer to divine intention. Faith becomes more than belief. It becomes partnership. Portals respond not to desperation alone, but to authorized agreement. They respond when heaven recognizes its own will reflected in your faith. They respond when your spirit is calibrated to divine order. They respond when there is no internal contradiction. Alignment creates flow. It removes blockages. It dismantles spiritual interference. It creates access points. It prepares the ground for manifestation. Faith becomes the key that fits perfectly into the lock of authority. When faith aligns with divine authority, you step into a dimension where access replaces striving, where clarity replaces confusion, where expectation replaces doubt, where movement replaces stagnation, where agreement replaces hesitation, where heaven's decree and your declaration merge into synchronized authority that positions you at the intersection of promise and manifestation as portals recognize alignment and respond to the harmony between your faith and divine order. Miracles are legislated in the spirit before they manifest in the natural. Nothing appears in the visible realm that was not first authorized in the invisible. Every breakthrough, every healing, every sudden shift begins as a decree before it becomes a display. What you see with your eyes is simply the evidence of what has already been settled in a higher realm. The spirit realm is not chaotic. It is structured. It is governmental. It operates on principles, order, and authorization. Just as laws are passed before they are enforced in a nation, miracles are decreed before they are experienced in daily life. Manifestation is the enforcement of what has already been established. Many people wait for visible proof before they believe something has shifted. They look for signs in the natural to validate what is happening spiritually. But legislation does not begin in what you can see. It begins in what has been declared. When something is legislated in the spirit, it carries authority, it carries backing, it carries inevitability. Before walls fall, there is a decree. Before chains break, there is a declaration. Before provision appears, there is authorization. The spirit realm responds to words aligned with divine will. When you legislate through prayer, you are not trying to create a miracle from nothing. You are enforcing what heaven has already permitted. Legislation implies intentionality. It implies strategy. It implies clarity. You do not accidentally legislate. You do not casually establish laws. There is deliberation. There is understanding. There is awareness of authority. In the same way, miracles are not accidental events scattered randomly through life. They are the results of spiritual decisions, divine decrees, and authorized alignment. When you pray with revelation, you enter into legislative prayer. You are not pleading emotionally. You are declaring intentionally. You are not hoping vaguely. You are specifying precisely. You are aligning your voice with divine intention and releasing it with authority. The natural realm is slower than the spirit realm. What is settled instantly in the spirit may take time to appear physically. That delay does not mean nothing happened. It means manifestation is unfolding. Just as a law passed in government takes time to affect systems and structures, a miracle legislated in the spirit moves through layers before it becomes visible. Understanding this changes your posture. You stop being discouraged by what you see. You stop reacting to temporary contradictions. You understand that if it has been legislated, it is only a matter of manifestation. Your faith stabilizes, your expectation strengthens. Miracles begin as divine conversations. They begin as decrees spoken by heaven and agreed upon by faith. When there is agreement, legislation is activated. Agreement creates legal ground. It creates permission for manifestation. In the spirit realm, words are not empty. They carry substance. They carry weight. They create structure. When you declare something aligned with divine will, you are participating in legislation. You are giving language to promise. You are enforcing covenant. There are moments when people pray repeatedly for something that has already been legislated. They ask again and again because they have not realized that the decree has already been issued. When you understand spiritual legislation, you shift from repetitive pleading to confident enforcement. You thank God for what has already been established. You stand firm on what has already been decided. Miracles manifest where there has been spiritual order. Disorder delays manifestation. Doubt interferes with enforcement. Fear attempts to challenge legislation. But when you remain aligned, when you hold to the decree, the natural realm begins to conform. The visible world responds to invisible authority. Systems shift because of unseen decrees. Hearts change because of spiritual legislation. Doors open because permission has been granted in a higher realm. Manifestation is simply the natural realm catching up to what the spirit has already declared. This is why consistency in prayer matters. You are not repeating words into emptiness. You are reinforcing legislation. You are standing in agreement with what has been authorized. You are ensuring that the decree is not contradicted by your speech. Spiritual legislation requires identity. You cannot legislate what you do not understand. You cannot enforce what you do not believe you have authority over. Identity empowers legislation. It reminds you that you are not speaking alone. You are speaking from position. Before the miracle appears in your finances, it is legislated in the spirit. Before healing is felt in your body, it is decreed in the unseen. Before restoration shows up in relationships, it is authorized in a higher realm. Manifestation is the evidence of prior authorization. There are unseen movements happening when you pray with authority. There are shifts in atmosphere. There are rearrangements of circumstances. There are alignments of timing. None of it may be visible immediately, but it is real. It is progressing. When legislation has taken place, opposition may intensify temporarily. Resistance may attempt to intimidate. But resistance does not cancel legislation. It only reveals that something has been set in motion. The presence of opposition is often proof that a decree has been issued. Miracles are not magic. They are structured interventions. They are the result of divine order intersecting with human alignment. They are the outcome of spiritual decisions made in the unseen realm. Your responsibility is not to force manifestation. It is to stand in agreement with legislation. It is to guard your words. It is to maintain alignment. It is to refuse contradiction. When you hold your position, the natural realm eventually reflects the spirit realm. Understanding spiritual legislation removes anxiety. You do not panic when you do not see immediate results. You know that something has already been settled. You know that the decree stands. You know that manifestation is unfolding. There is a confidence that comes when you realize that miracles are not being invented in the moment of appearance. They are being revealed. They are being unveiled. They are being enforced. The visible becomes a testimony of the invisible. Every time you pray with authority, you are participating in legislation. You are aligning your voice with divine order. You are declaring what heaven has already authorized. You are establishing legal ground for manifestation. The natural realm may argue temporarily. Circumstances may resist. But legislation in the spirit carries permanence. It carries authority. It carries inevitability. What has been decreed does not disappear because of delay. When you grasp this truth, your prayer life transforms. You stop measuring progress by what you see. You measure it by what has been declared. You live from decree rather than reaction. You stand on legislation rather than emotion. Miracles are legislated in the spirit before they manifest in the natural, settled before they are seen, authorized before they are experienced. declared before they are demonstrated, established before they are revealed, determined before they are displayed, decreed before they are delivered into visibility, as the natural realm aligns itself with the authority of what has already been spoken and stands in motion toward manifestation. Acceleration is the reward of spiritual alignment. When alignment is established, speed increases. When your life comes into agreement with divine order, delays begin to lose their grip. What once moved slowly begins to advance rapidly. What once felt stagnant begins to flow. Acceleration is not randomness. It is the natural consequence of positioning. Spiritual alignment means your thoughts, words, actions, and intentions are synchronized with divine purpose. There is no internal contradiction. There is no double-mindedness. There is no hidden resistance. Alignment removes friction. And wherever friction is removed, movement becomes faster. Many people pray for speed, but they resist alignment. They desire sudden breakthrough, yet they hold onto patterns that create delay. Acceleration is not triggered by desperation. It is triggered by order. When heaven sees order, it releases momentum. Imagine gears in motion. If even one gear is misaligned, the entire system slows down. But when every component is positioned correctly, movement becomes seamless. In the same way, when your spirit aligns with divine authority, your progress becomes fluid. You stop working against yourself. You stop speaking against your own prayers. Alignment sharpens focus. It eliminates distractions that consume time and energy. It clarifies direction. When direction is clear, speed increases. You no longer wander. You move intentionally. You step with precision. Acceleration does not mean chaos. It does not mean rushing without wisdom. It means efficient progress. It means divine momentum. It means that what once required years begins to unfold in months. What once required months begins to unfold in days. Spiritual alignment positions you within divine timing. Timing is everything. When you move outside of timing, you experience frustration. When you move within timing, you experience acceleration. Alignment ensures you are not ahead of grace and not behind opportunity. There are seasons when preparation feels slow, growth feels hidden, development feels unnoticed. But preparation is alignment in process. It is heaven adjusting your capacity so that when acceleration begins, you are ready to sustain it. Acceleration without alignment creates collapse. Rapid success without spiritual structure leads to instability. But when alignment comes first, acceleration becomes sustainable. It builds rather than breaks. It advances rather than overwhelms. Spiritual alignment requires surrender. It requires obedience. It requires integrity. Each act of obedience strengthens positioning. Each decision to align reinforces momentum. You may not see immediate results, but alignment is building infrastructure for speed. When your speech aligns with promise, acceleration begins in your atmosphere. When your mindset aligns with possibility, acceleration begins in your thinking. When your actions align with instruction, acceleration begins in your path. Heaven rewards consistency. Alignment is not a one-time decision, it is a lifestyle. It is daily recalibration. It is choosing agreement over doubt. It is choosing faith over fear. Every choice toward alignment increases momentum. Acceleration often follows correction. When something is out of place and you realign it, movement resumes. Delays that once felt permanent suddenly break. Doors that were closed begin to open. Opportunities that were distant draw near. Spiritual alignment also aligns relationships. It brings the right connections into your life at the right time. It removes misaligned influences. It creates synergy. When relationships are aligned, progress multiplies. Acceleration is not only external, it is internal. Your understanding deepens quickly. Your discernment sharpens rapidly. Your confidence grows steadily. Internal acceleration prepares you for external expansion. When you align with divine authority, you stop wasting time on battles that were never assigned to you. You conserve energy, you focus on purpose. Efficiency increases, movement accelerates. There are invisible adjustments happening when you choose alignment. Heaven begins to rearrange circumstances. It synchronizes events. It orchestrates timing. What looked like coincidence becomes coordination. Acceleration also requires trust. When speed increases, you must remain grounded. Alignment keeps you stable. It keeps you centered. It ensures that momentum does not lead to imbalance. Spiritual alignment reduces resistance. It closes doors to unnecessary conflict. It brings peace where there was tension. When resistance decreases, progress accelerates. Sometimes acceleration appears as restoration of lost time. Opportunities that were misreturned, resources that were delayed are released. Favor that seemed distant becomes accessible. Alignment redeems what was once postponed. Alignment brings clarity of assignment. When you know exactly what you are called to do, you move faster, confusion slows movement, clarity speeds it up. Acceleration is often quiet before it becomes visible. There is a build-up of unseen momentum. Small shifts accumulate, subtle changes compound. Then suddenly, movement becomes undeniable. When alignment becomes consistent, acceleration becomes predictable. You expect progress, you anticipate movement. You are no longer surprised by breakthrough because you understand the principle. Spiritual alignment also requires humility. It means being willing to adjust. It means allowing correction. Every correction is an opportunity for increased speed. Acceleration is the evidence that heaven trusts your positioning. It is the sign that capacity has been developed. It is the manifestation of readiness. When your heart aligns with divine will, your steps align with divine direction. When your steps align with direction, distance shortens. What once felt far becomes near. Alignment strengthens resilience. When challenges arise, you do not lose momentum. You stay focused, you stay steady, you stay aligned. Acceleration does not eliminate process. It optimizes it. It streamlines growth. It removes unnecessary delays. When spiritual alignment becomes your foundation, momentum becomes your environment. Clarity becomes your compass. Obedience becomes your rhythm. Trust becomes your anchor. Focus becomes your strength. Integrity becomes your structure. Consistency becomes your pattern. And progress becomes your testimony as speed increases without instability and advancement unfolds without confusion, because alignment has created the conditions for acceleration to operate within divine order and sustainable momentum. What you decree today disrupts delays tomorrow. Your words are not temporary sounds, they are seeds planted into time. Every decree carries momentum. Every declaration sets something in motion. When you speak with authority and alignment, you are not just addressing the present moment, you are shaping what is about to unfold. Delays are often sustained by silence, doubt, or contradictory language. When you fail to speak, you allow stagnation to remain unchallenged. When you speak fear, you reinforce resistance. But when you decree with clarity and conviction, you interrupt patterns that were trying to extend into your future. A decree is not casual conversation. It is intentional. It is focused. It is spoken from a place of authority. When you decree, you are establishing a line in the spirit. You are declaring that certain cycles will not continue. You are announcing that certain limitations will not renew themselves. Time responds to faith-filled language. The future is sensitive to what you are saying now. If your present speech is aligned with promise, your tomorrow begins to shift. If your declarations are rooted in doubt, delay gains permission to linger. Your words are permissions and prohibitions. When you decree today, you confront tomorrow's obstacles before they manifest. You address issues while they are still forming. You dismantle barriers before they become visible. What you speak now becomes a shield against future stagnation. Delays often operate subtly. They appear as minor setbacks. They disguise themselves as harmless interruptions. But when left unchallenged, they compound. A day becomes a week becomes a month becomes a season. Decrees break compounding delay. Your voice carries creative force. It aligns with divine authority when spoken in agreement with truth. What you decree today creates spiritual momentum that travels ahead of you. It prepares the path. It clears resistance. It announces your arrival before you step into new territory. There are moments when destiny waits for your declaration. Opportunities hover in potential until you speak alignment over them. Doors remain closed not because they are locked, but because they require authorization. Decrees provide that authorization. When you declare clarity, confusion weakens. When you declare movement, stagnation retreats. When you declare favor, opposition loses leverage. Each decree creates disruption in the realm of delay. The enemy of progress often relies on hesitation. If you remain uncertain, delays gain strength. But when you speak with certainty, hesitation dissolves. Confidence destabilizes stagnation. Decrees are strategic. They are not emotional reactions. They are deliberate statements of alignment. When you decree promise over your life, you are reinforcing heaven's intention. You are standing in agreement with what has already been established. Tomorrow is shaped by today's language. If you wake up speaking defeat, tomorrow inherits that atmosphere. If you wake up declaring breakthrough, tomorrow begins to align with that expectation. Words create environment. Delays thrive in environments of inconsistency. If your declarations shift daily, momentum weakens. But when your decrees remain steady, resistance begins to erode. Consistency strengthens disruption. What you decree today also strengthens your mindset. As you speak alignment repeatedly, belief deepens. Expectation rises. You begin to live in anticipation rather than anxiety. That internal shift influences external outcomes. There is power in timing. A decree spoken at the right moment carries amplified effect. Sensitivity to divine timing sharpens your declarations. You speak when prompted. You align when instructed. Decrees establish boundaries. They define what is allowed and what is not. When you declare that delay is broken, you are setting a boundary in the spirit. You are refusing to accommodate stagnation. Each time you decree with faith, you reinforce identity. You remind yourself that you have authority. You remind yourself that your voice matters. Confidence expands. Doubt contracts. Delays are not always external. Sometimes they are internal. Procrastination, fear of failure, lack of clarity. Decrees disrupt internal barriers as well. When you declare discipline, focus strengthens. When you declare courage, hesitation weakens. Your future is listening to your present. It is responding to your tone. It is aligning with your expectation. What you decree today sends instructions into your tomorrow. Momentum builds gradually. One decree may feel small, but repeated declarations compound impact. They layer authority. They reinforce alignment. Eventually, delay cannot sustain itself under consistent disruption. Decrees also attract alignment. When you speak breakthrough, you become attentive to opportunities. When you speak growth, you recognize learning moments. Your perception sharpens. What you decree shapes your atmosphere. Atmosphere influences outcomes. A room filled with faith produces different results than a room filled with doubt. There are unseen adjustments happening when you decree. Paths are being redirected. Conversations are being influenced. Decisions are being shaped. The ripple effect extends beyond what you can measure. Disrupting delay requires boldness. It requires speaking even when evidence is limited. It requires declaring before confirmation appears. Faith speaks ahead of manifestation. Every decree plants expectation. Expectation fuels action. Action accelerates progress. The cycle strengthens itself. When you declare that tomorrow will not mirror yesterday's stagnation, you are initiating change. You are breaking repetition. You are refusing to relive limitation. What you decree today becomes a prophetic interruption. It cuts through inertia. It slices through postponement. It announces movement. Your words are architecture. They construct frameworks for your future. If you build with doubt, you create instability. If you build with faith, you create resilience. Decrees must align with truth to carry power. Empty repetition weakens impact, but declarations rooted in revelation carry authority. When you consistently decree progress, your mind begins to search for pathways. Creativity increases. Solutions emerge. Focus intensifies. Delays begin to lose influence when they are confronted regularly. Silence empowers stagnation. Speech disrupts it. What you decree today echoes into tomorrow. It sets rhythm. It establishes tone. It declares direction. Each day offers an opportunity to reinforce momentum. Each declaration compounds influence. When you understand that your words are shaping the next chapter, you speak carefully. You speak intentionally, you speak boldly. What you decree today disrupts delays tomorrow, rearranges timelines, shifts atmospheres, strengthens identity, clarifies direction, reinforces alignment, builds expectation, dismantles hesitation, interrupts stagnation, accelerates progress, and sends a signal into your future that delay is no longer permitted to occupy space where movement has been declared and authority has spoken with unwavering conviction into the unfolding of what is yet to manifest. Open heavens create on-demand breakthroughs. When the heavens are open, access replaces struggle. When the heavens are open, clarity replaces confusion. When the heavens are open, supply meets need without obstruction. An open heaven is not symbolic language. It represents divine accessibility, unhindered flow, and uninterrupted communication between the spiritual realm and the natural realm. Under an open heaven, revelation flows freely. Insight comes with precision. Direction becomes unmistakable. You are not guessing your next move. You are receiving it. You are not striving to interpret signs. You are walking in discernment. Breakthrough becomes responsive because access is established. Closed heavens feel heavy. They feel resistant. They feel delayed. Effort seems multiplied while results remain minimal. But when heaven opens, resistance weakens. Effort becomes efficient. What once required relentless pushing begins to respond to simple alignment. On-demand breakthroughs are not about impatience. They are about positioning. When the heavens are open, you are aligned with divine timing and authority. The request and the response are not separated by unnecessary interference. There is immediacy because there is agreement. Open heavens amplify prayer. Words carry greater weight. Decrees move faster. Faith feels strengthened. It is not that God has changed, it is that access has been recognized. Awareness shifts posture, expectation rises, and open heaven is sustained by alignment, obedience, and consistent faith. It is cultivated through integrity. When your life aligns with divine order, you position yourself under flow rather than friction. Breakthrough on demand does not mean absence of process. It means the process is supported. It means grace accelerates what effort alone could not accomplish. It means divine favor intersects with preparation. Under open heavens, provision becomes timely. Resources arrive when needed. Solutions appear at critical moments. Connections form strategically. You begin to notice divine orchestration. Clarity is one of the first signs of open heavens. Confusion dissipates. Uncertainty loses dominance. Decisions become confident rather than hesitant. Open heavens also create sensitivity. You become aware of shifts in atmosphere. You discern when to act and when to wait. Breakthrough is not forced, it is received. There is a responsiveness in the spirit when heavens are open. Prayers are answered with momentum. Opportunities align with readiness. Doors respond to knocking. On-demand breakthroughs are not magic events. They are the result of sustained positioning. You have built consistency. You have maintained faith. You have guarded alignment. When the moment comes, response is swift because preparation has been established. Open heavens also release creativity. Ideas flow. Innovation increases. Strategy sharpens. What seemed complicated becomes manageable. When heaven is open, peace accompanies movement. You are not frantic. You are not overwhelmed. You are confident. Breakthrough becomes predictable under open heavens. Not because life lacks challenge, but because access remains consistent. An open heaven shifts perspective. You begin to see possibilities where others see barriers. You interpret delays as adjustments rather than defeat. Flow characterizes open heavens. Energy is conserved. Focus is sustained. Productivity increases. There's also protection under open heavens. Guidance prevents unnecessary detours. Discernment guards against distraction. On-demand breakthroughs require expectation. If you anticipate delay, you reinforce it. If you anticipate response, you prepare for it. Gratitude sustains open heavens. Recognition of flow strengthens awareness. Appreciation amplifies alignment. Open heavens cultivate boldness. You approach challenges differently. You speak differently. You act differently. Breakthrough on demand often appears in moments of need. Just when pressure intensifies, provision manifests. Just when uncertainty rises, clarity appears. Consistency is key. You do not open heaven through occasional faith. You sustain access through daily alignment. Open heavens create momentum. Success builds upon success. Confidence builds upon confidence. There is a synergy between preparation and opportunity under open heavens. Effort meets favor. Skill meets timing. Breakthrough is not accidental. It is facilitated by access. It is activated by alignment. Open heavens transform atmosphere. Environments shift. Conversations change. Opportunities expand. Expectation fuels manifestation. When you live under open heavens, you anticipate response. You look for movement. Faith becomes active rather than passive. You are engaged with divine flow. Open heavens eliminate